There's nothing says fear of losing like 3 stops in the critical swing state of Pennsylvania in a single day.
8 days, you believe that? 8 days from now, we're going to win the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we are going to win 4 more great years in the White House.
Trump winning here in 2016 was a crucial part of his victory over Hillary Clinton, as it will be this time round if he's to see off his rival Joe Biden.
He will eradicate your energy and send Pennsylvania into a crippling depression.
But Biden's ahead in the polls here, and Donald Trump knows it, hence the anti-Biden video, surely a sign of nerves, given not a single one of these Trump supporters would ever vote for a Democrat. And here's one of the reasons why. Donald Trump promised them more conservatives on the Supreme Court. And today, in a highly controversial Senate vote, the president's nominee, Judge Amy Coney Barrett, will join the ranks of the highest court in the land, replacing the former liberal icon Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
We're moving this nomination forward. And colleagues, by tomorrow night, we'll have a new member of the United States Supreme Court.
The lifetime appointment of Judge Barrett to justice will give conservatives a more powerful majority on the court and have profound implications for Americans around access to abortions, healthcare and immigration for a generation to come. Which is why the Democrats wanted the vote on her nomination to be delayed until after the election.
The Republican Party is willing to ignore the pandemic to rush this Supreme Court nomination forward. And the Vice President, after being potentially exposed to COVID, will preside.
Exposed to COVID by his chief of staff, who tested positive for the virus over the weekend. But that hasn't stopped Vice President Mike Pence from continuing his rallies, today due in Minnesota. Pence does get the final vote for Judge Barrett's nomination if there's a tie-break, but given the Republicans already have the numbers, he's unlikely to attend. John Bon Jovi was the warm-up act for Joe Biden during one of his 2 Pennsylvania stops yesterday. More contrast with Donald Trump if you needed it. The socially distant crowd looking on from the safety of the car park.
We're the only country in the world that's come out of every crisis stronger than we went in. There's not a damn thing America can't do when we decide to do it together.
As Biden was speaking, the president took a brief pause last night, throwing open the White House for a Halloween party for local children, including 2 mini-me's in masks. Trump's recurring nightmare, though, losing the right to call this place home in just 8 days' time.
Well, joining me now from Virginia is the prominent conservative political commentator Bill Kristol. Thanks for coming on the program, Bill Kristol. I was looking at the early returns of young people voting in states like Pennsylvania, and the numbers were really quite extraordinary. 140,000 people between the ages of 18 and 29 have voted in this state alone already. That's 10 times as many as 4 years ago. Most of those, we think, are Biden supporters. So that is looking pretty bad for Donald Trump, isn't it?
The polls look good for Biden, and the early turnout, so far as one can tell, we don't know who they voted for, of course. Maybe disproportionately young people for Trump turned out. But young people in the polls are 2-1 for Biden. So the numbers look good for Biden. Of course, they look pretty good for Hillary Clinton, not as good, honestly, in 2016 as they do for Biden in 2020. So, but Democrats are very nervous, as you can understand.
Indeed. So the other issue is that, there's a lot of talk about what happens, after the results. Will it take a long time to actually calculate and count all the votes, especially if there are postal votes? You've been taking part in a thing called the Transition Integrity Project, which looks at the different scenarios here. How worried are you about real, insecurity, even insurrection, if the result is not entirely clear?
Well, you saw, your own program just now showed the kinds of tensions we have, and that's 8 days before the election. What if it's very, very close? What if President Trump goes on television and says they're stealing our ballots, they're destroying Republican ballots, they're committing fraud, march on the Capitol, Lansing, Michigan, and be armed? And what if then other people say, well, we need to march if they're marching? I mean, it is a scary prospect. I think if the election is not that close, if it's resolved reasonably quickly, if Biden wins by 6, 8, 10 points, wins not just the upper Midwestern states, but Florida perhaps, or North Carolina, then I'm not too worried. I mean, we have a federal system. The states will count the ballots. Trump can complain, but I think people will say, oh, come on. But if it's very, very close, I'm worried about the potential for violence and for genuine civil discord. I don't think we'll have a civil war, but we could have a kind of thing that we have not seen in the United States really in a long, long, long time.
And then when you consider the number of guns in private hands here, more than 300 million, I mean, that's got to be cause for concern as well.
Yeah, and again, yes, we've had that problem for a long time, and it's had real consequences. Not a problem, but fact, which has its problematic aspects for a long time. But again, for me, what's really amazing is we have a president who incites certainly encourages divisiveness, doesn't come down hard against lawlessness if it's lawlessness on his side, encourages people to carry weapons and to, chant things like "lock them up" as if your political opponent is a criminal, calls his opponents criminals, traitors, and so forth. Usually, whatever the problems we have in America, and God knows we've had many over the years, presidents try to calm things down. Presidents try to say, look, we have to follow the law. If it's an election, we have to count the ballots. We have to be peaceful. We do not have a president who says that. And, 40% of the country follows him, maybe 20% really like him. And that's a lot of people to have out there being encouraged, in a sense, to act out their hatreds, really, in a way, instead of repressing them.
Okay, very briefly, you were a never Trumper from the very beginning as a conservative, as a lifelong Republican, really. What does his victory, or indeed his failure, do to your party after November the 3rd?
His victory would make the party Trump's party, not something I want to have anything to do with. His failure, especially if it's a significant failure, a decisive loss, means there's a chance that we have a conservative party in the U.S. that isn't nativist, xenophobic, and authoritarian. And that's why I hope Biden beats him, and I hope Biden beats him badly.
Okay, Bill Kristol, thank you very much indeed for coming on.